Well, United Airlines is on the apology tour again after flight attendants falsely accused a gay father of molesting his son on the plane. Henry Amador Batten, heading back to North Carolina with his son Ben last week, just a little guy, 5 years old. Flight attendants mistakenly said he was touching his son inappropriately. So they called the police, who met them at the gate, and they determined, or investigated, but then determined that nothing improper had happened. United did apologize, but our question is it enough? Joining me now, that papa, that proud papa of a beautiful son, Henry Amador Batten. And first of all, my condolences to you, because I understand you were traveling home from Puerto Rico after losing your father. So you obviously were already in a heavy heart, and this situation happened. Did something happen right away for you to know that there was something amiss with this flight attendant? They thought something inappropriate was happening with you?
Hi, Michaela. Thank you, first of all, for the condolences. Yeah, it's been a heavy week. Actually, it's really, no. What happened on the flight was that I did take notice of a flight attendant who passed by us and looked at us a little oddly. And for people that, live in the shoes of a minority, especially for gay people, you have a certain sense when somebody is looking at you. And sometimes it's that really supportive, hey, you guys are so great look. And sometimes it's a little more sinister. So this one had that vibe, but I really had no reason to think of why it would be. And I actually remember looking at Ben to see if his seatbelt was fastened properly. It just kind of struck me that way. But it was fine. And then he kept going. And I'm going to say about maybe 10 minutes later or so, the same flight attendant came by and asked me if I was traveling with the family in front of us. There was two females and a male with a baby in front of us. And I remember I was in and out of napping, and I looked and I said, no, it's just he and I. And again, I took it funny, but I didn't know why. And it was late. We were traveling all day, and it wasn't registering, but something was certainly amiss.
I, quote unquote, don't match my parents either. And I know exactly what you're talking about. You're used to getting those looks, etc. But when that happened, when you realized something was going on and police were called, what did that feel like inside your heart?
It has been so difficult for me to explain this because people have asked me, are you angry? Did you feel embarrassed? Were you insulted? There's all of these things that people throw at you because they want to know what you're feeling. Sorry, I get a little emotional. But for me, what happened was that it kind of opened up something in my heart that I don't think parents are supposed to have opened. So that feeling that came out is relatively new one. And I haven't been able to figure it out, nor do I know where to put it. But it's just a combination of basically fear from my child. That's the first thing. What people have to understand is that families like ours are very fragile. And it doesn't take more than an allegation like this to destroy a family. So my first fear was my boy. Like, was somebody coming to take him from me? And then, it swirled into, anger and disbelief. And we're still living in that world. It's very cloudy. It's very murky. And we haven't quite been able to figure it out yet, to be honest with you.
Well, first of all, Papa, your family is strong. I am here from a non-traditional family, and I'm telling you, what you have is beautiful and strong and pure, and we can't let other people try and bring that down. You pause right there, Papa, and I'm going to bring in your attorney because I know you've got an attorney that is by your side and is going to fiercely fight this battle for you. This is Kenneth Padowitz. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Is there a plan to sue the airline? You've been in communication with them. What exactly are they saying besides apologizing to your client?
Well, the conduct here is just outrageous. To go from 0 to 100 and have no evidence, and to call law enforcement, have uniformed police officers come to the gate with guns and stop a parent with their 5-year-old child. This kind of conduct cannot be tolerated by the flying public, and it's certainly not going to be tolerated by my client. We will pursue every legal action that we can take against United to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I mean, this is just horrific conduct by this airline. It is
specifically
not to be
what kind of changes would you like to see, Kenneth? Is it a question of training? Is it a question of sensitivity and understanding training for perhaps the flight attendant? What exactly specific changes would you like to see?
Well, I think that's a great suggestion. They should start there with proper training. I mean, for an airline employee, not to go over, if they have some type of question that they ask the passenger, maybe inquire as to the relationship, maybe ask a few questions. Just that's what we expect from any human being, never mind someone who represents a multi-million-dollar airline. And you know, he bought a ticket. He's on a flight with his son. He's doing nothing more innocent than traveling with his child. And for this to occur is just not acceptable. So training is absolutely the first place they can start. And I'm sure there's all kinds of other possibilities as well that this airline should do in order to treat their passengers appropriately. This just is outrageous conduct.
Henry, let me ask you one last question. And Kenneth, thank you so much for that. I know the last thing with all you've got going on in your life, you do not want to be a poster child for this. But clearly, you're not afraid to stand up and make some noise and say this needs attention. What do you want to see happen and change here?
Well, you know, I'll tell you honestly, Michaela, there have been a couple of moments where my husband and I have said we should let this go because it's a lot, it's overwhelming. But we have gotten so much support, and the stories that we have heard from men, and I don't just mean gay dads, I mean dads, uncles, brothers, any male that comes in contact with a child has told us that this is literally their worst nightmare.
Absolutely.
To be accused of the worst thing possible when you're loving and nurturing your child. So, I mean, if there's anything, first of all, I would do nothing differently. If I had to redo it, I would love my child the way I love my child. Whatever we're going through now is temporary, but the love that I gave him will last his lifetime. So I hope that, if anything, it creates a conversation that men are not predators. We're not monsters.
That's right.
And we can love our children just as good as anybody else.
Kenneth Padowitz, Henry Amador Batten, and we should point out that Henry had his hand on his 5-year-old's leg because he was a little nervous about flying, and he was just letting him know that he was there, as any parent would do for their little one. Kenneth and Henry, our very greatest thanks. Thanks for joining us both today to have this very important conversation. Let us know how things go, gentlemen.
Thank you, Michaela.
All right, we're going to take a short break.